Tamira Cornelius, who is going to start us off for prayer. Ms. Tamira Cornelius is the president of the Dominica Cancer Society Youth Arm. Ms. Tamira, lead us off in prayer, please.
Good evening, everybody. I am Tamara Cornelius, the president of the Dominica Cancer Society, acting president. And tonight we will join our heads and close our eyes as we give thanks to the Lord for coming here. So, Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here, Lord. Lord, we are praying that we have a good and successful meet. Ensure that actually we touch on the effect of loneliness on our psychic and we are able to use the knowledge that you will learn and have a successful discussion. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Piero, your mic is muted.
Apologies. Thank you very much, SG. As I was saying, right now we have the JCI Creed. For those of you who are not members of JCI, we usually start off, well, not usually, we start off all our official functions with the JCI Creed. So join me, fellow JCs. We believe...
Piero, it's a point of privilege before you move on. Can you just check your private chat, please?
Okay, thank you very much, SG. Let me just... Okay, so SG has informed me that we are not live. Can the technical team check on that, please? All right, lovely. So we are up and running now. Thank you very much. So we will resume with the creed. Fellow JCs, join me. We believe that faith in God gives meaning and purpose to human life, that brotherhood of man transcends the sovereignty of nation, that economic justice can best be won by free men through free enterprise, that government should be of law rather than of man, that Earth's greatest treasure lies in human personalities, and that service to humanity is the best work of life. Next, the JCI mission to provide development opportunities that empowers young people to create positive change. Our vision, to be the leading global network of young active citizens. We will now have the introduction of our host by President of the Dominica Dementia Foundation, Ms. Ron Nicholas.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, thanks. Mr. Firelander is a 23-year-old, multi-talented, spirited, and ambitious young man. File began his journey of youth leadership and ambassadorship at the tender age of 9, when he represented Dominica at the 2010 Caribbean 4-H public speaking competition, where he emerged third. From there, File went on to establish the first ever 4-H club at his alma mater, the St. Mary's Academy, and served as the inaugural president of the club. Since then, File has served in the capacity of President of the Dominica Dementia Foundation, Vice President of the Roseau South and Central District Youth Council, President of the Dominica State College Glee Club, and the Dominica Red Cross Youth Arm. File has a passion for the arts and culture and is a member of the country's premier youth chorale, the Sixth Form Cicero Singers, as a second tenor. File has also served as a judge for several local pageants and chaperone for the Miss Dominica pageant on 2 occasions. At present, File serves as the Secretary General of Junior Chamber International Dominica Chapter, first Vice President of the National Youth Council of Dominica, and committee member of the Dominica Festival Committee. He recently represented JCI Dominica at the National Youth Parliament and was elected chairman of the cohort. File holds a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing and is currently employed as a registered nurse at the Accident and Emergency Department of the Dominica China Friendship Hospital. Mr. File.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nicholas. It's always a pleasure to meet you and have discussions with you, and it is indeed a pleasure to be here this evening. Most timely and very important discussion on mental health, and more specifically that of loneliness. And we have a very packed program for you guys this evening. I want to say good evening to all our viewers on Facebook. I want to say good evening especially to my mother, Munia Langford. Good evening to you. And of course to every one of you who have tuned in to this very interesting, timely, and important discussion on the loneliness and how it affects our psyche. So, without further ado, I'm going to go right into introducing our panelists this evening. And it is indeed my pleasure to say good evening to you all who are sitting here and waiting, very excited, I'm sure, to answer all the questions that we have set for you. I hope that the questions are not too difficult and we are able to get everything, get an understanding of what loneliness is. So the first person who we're going to be talking about is none other than Miss Dentricia Blanchett. Ms. Dentricia Blanchett is the founder of Be Well and Bloom, a non-profit that provides mental health support to young women and men ages 16 to 35 through group therapy, workshops, and consulting on the island of St. Kitts and Nevis. She is especially passionate about helping individuals overcome depression and anxiety and related disorders and the challenges. During sessions, she integrates mindfulness, principles of cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and expressive arts interventions. Outside of her work in the field of mental health, she owns a communications consultancy and serves as the Associate Director of Admissions at St. George's University in Grenada. So when I say good evening to you, Miriam, give us a little wave, let us know that you are here.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everybody.
Good evening. So we'll be with you one moment, Miss Blanchett. So we're going to move on to our next guest this evening. When I say good evening to you, and she is none other than Miss Diana Gittins. Miss Diana Gittins works with the Guyana Telephone and Telegraph Company, a private telecommunications company, as the coordinator for Guyana's largest cancer awareness and fundraising initiative. She manages the company's corporate social responsibility initiatives, including the grant application process for cancer-related funding for NGOs across the country. Prior to her current role at the company, she served in the capacity of business partner for health and wellness. She functioned on the board of directors of the Dominica Cancer Society for 5 years, first as secretary and then president. Her areas of work are advocating for access to treatment, diagnostic screening, and psychological support for persons affected by cancer. Ms. Gittins is a cervical cancer survivor and Views Our Voices peer trainer and member of the Our Views Our Voices Global Advisory Committee member. Diana Gittins holds a BSc in biology from the University of Guyana and MSc Public Health in nutrition from the University of Technology in Jamaica. She's also a trained teacher with an associate degree in secondary education. Diana is passionate about using health promotion and advocacy as tools to fight the scourge of NCDs in the Caribbean and around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, let's say good evening to Diana Gittins. Good evening to you, Ms. Gittins.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us this evening and looking forward to the discussion. Oh my God, I'm so excited for this next guest. I want to say a special good evening to her. And of course, Miss Frederica James, Auntie Fuero, as we used to call her in college. Miss Frederica James is an enthusiast of everything psychology. She holds a Master of Science in Counseling Psychology from the University of Kansas and a Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration from the University of the Virgin Islands. Miss James has been a psychology lecturer and counselor at the Dominica State College since 2004, and her time there has afforded her the opportunity to implement and coordinate the institution's peer counseling program. Miss James has facilitated many workshops for various organizations, and she sits on many boards of directors of distinguished organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, let's say good evening to Miss Frederica James. Good night, Miss James.
Good night.
And last but definitely not least, I want to say good evening to our final panelist, Dr. Shalina John Jules. Dr. Shalina John Jules, being in love with medicine and science her whole life, Dr. John Jules decided to pursue her dreams as a physician in 2008 at the Celia Sanchez School of Medicine in Cuba. She began practicing medicine in 2018 and has been working at the Acute Psychiatric Unit, APU, of the Dominica China Friendship Hospital as a medical officer from December 2020 to present. During the time spent at the unit with mentally ill patients, she has developed a passion for psychiatry. As a diligent physician who is always willing to help others and give back to the community, she embarked on joining the Lions Club of Dominica in 2019. Dr. John Jules, a mother of two beautiful princesses, is a free-spirited, outgoing, and a loving person who hopes to make a difference in decreasing stigma and discrimination in mental health in Dominica. Good evening to you, Dr. John Jules.
Good evening.
Hi. So, thank you so much for joining us. So, before we proceed with tonight's program, we just want to send our love to one of our final panelists who would have joined us this evening, Ms. Alina Gomes, who unfortunately is unable to be with us this evening. Want to say good evening to her and want to send her all our love from JCI Dominica and from our partners. Just want to remind you guys this evening that tonight's program is brought to you not only from JCI Dominica, but it's rather a partnership between JCI Dominica, Lions International, the Dominica Dementia Foundation, and the Cancer Society. So, without further ado, we're going to start off the discussion and enjoy ourselves tonight and just make it a very calm and casual conversation, as most counselors will tell you. When you go into a counseling session, we're having a conversation. It's not about anything hard. These questions are very simple, but are very heavy when you come to think about it. And I want to ask each of the panelists this evening, one by one. So, Diana, then Tricia, I see you have your camera up already. So I'm going to ask you, what can we say is mental health and why it's important in today's world? And I see you smiling because I think this might be one of the harder of the questions. So let me know. What do you think? What can we say is mental health and why is it?
Sure. Can you hear me? Can you let me know if you can hear me? Are you hearing me okay?
It's like handed, Trisha. You can go ahead.
Sure thing. So, hi everybody again. Thank you so much for being here. I want to really thank the organizers for organizing this. We cannot speak about mental health enough. And no matter the forum, it's an important topic. Now, we all have mental health. And sometimes in the Caribbean, we take it for granted. Sometimes we, put it on the back burner. But mental health is just how we adapt to life. It's how we think. It's how we view things that happen to us. And when we think about that basic definition, that really summarizes what the World Health Organization would have shared. It really impacts all of us. And one thing we've realized in the field is that each of us, we're vulnerable. Our mental health is impacted by so many things, guys, by the environment, what is happening in the community, by our hormonal changes, by the genetics, by traumatic experiences. So when we consider just how vulnerable we each are, it is important that we do intentional things to take care of just how we think, how we view life, and how we face whatever we are facing.
Thank you very much, then, Trisha. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's move right along. Diana, good evening to you again. So tell me, what can we say is mental health and why is it important in today's world?
Kyle, can you repeat that, please?
Yes, so I'm asking, what can we say is mental health and why is it important in today's world?
Okay, so I'm just going to build on what then Tricia said. I'm hoping that I got the pronunciation right also. I really do agree with you, and just to add it, it really is a state of well-being, and a state of well-being where persons are able to realize their own abilities, where persons are most productive, where they recognize their worth and the contributions that they make to society. And, it is important because mental health impacts how we work, how we interact with each other, how productive we are, whether it's in our relationships within the family, in the home, our relationships in the workplace, and that can definitely impact our contributions to society. So yes, I agree with Tricia, and I just think that these are the things, and I'm sure that the other panelists will add to what I would have said.
Thank you very much to you, Diana. Ms. James, tell me, what can we say is mental health and why is it important in today's world?
Thank you very much. I'm indeed pleased to be here this evening. Mental health, and then just about everybody will have something that is similar when we say what is mental health. So, mental health is the emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It can affect how we think, like somebody said earlier, or we feel, how we act. Mental health helps us determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices in our life. It is important that we are mentally healthy throughout our lifetime, childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. Remember, a healthy mind is a healthy body. A healthy body is a healthy mind. So sometimes we want to tear mental health from physical health. We should not do that. There are contributing factors like our biological factors, our genes, our brain chemistry, even our life experiences. Somebody mentioned that trauma, stress can affect our mental health. Most importantly, family history can affect mental health. Mental health is important because it determines if we are able to operate psychologically, emotionally, and socially, not in isolation, but among others. So I guess that's where the loneliness part comes in. That's my bit for now.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. James. And I think each of you have just given us a very good grasp of what we think that mental health is and why it is important. But I just want to hear from our final panelist here this evening, Dr. John Jules. What can we say is mental health? What can you say rather is mental health? And why is it so important in today's world?
Okay, well, good night, and I would like to say thanks for having me there tonight. And I would have to agree with the other panelists that mental health actually includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. But I would also like to add that it enables us to realize that our own choices, or it enables us to realize our own abilities to work productively and fruitfully and to make a contribution to our community. Now, when it comes to talking about the importance of mental health in today's world, I must add that today's world is much different compared to what we know of when we were young. Because before, when we were young, it was easier. Our life was much more simple. I mean, there's stuff that we would do. We would play sports. We'd go to the river. We'd go to the sea. But as of today, today's world is quick pace. It's more complex, and it's technologically driven. So as a result, it's important to have a good mental health. That way, it won't affect the way that we work and the way that we communicate with others and the way that we live our life of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. John Jules. And one time, while I have you here, can you tell me what do we? Because the topic we're talking about tonight is loneliness. So while I have you here, I want you to just start up, get the ball rolling for us to talk about loneliness. What is this thing about loneliness? I know Akon had this song back in the day, "Lonely, I am so lonely." What is loneliness really? Is it something that we should be worried about? Is it something that? Tell me more about.
Well, so basically, it's common for all of us. I should say it's common for all of us to feel loneliness every now and then. But I would give a definition of loneliness. It's basically a state of mind that makes you feel isolated from people and physical being. So loneliness isn't reliant on being alone. I say that to say, meaning that you can be around people, around family and friends, but yet still you feel lonely. So it's how I would say it's that loneliness is like you can surround yourself with family and yet your feelings of loneliness still somehow manage to persist. So it's basically how you feel is your state of mind. So you can be by yourself and not feel lonely, and you can be around family and friends and then you feel lonely. So it's basically you isolating your mind. That's how I see it.
Okay, thank you for that input. So then, Tracy, I'm going to come to you and ask you, what do we classify as loneliness? Is it something that is a World Health Organization thing that is new, or has it been around for some time? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, sure. So it's a very heavy topic, Kyle, because there are so many layers to loneliness. So, as the good doctor would have shared, it's really being disconnected from others, and it's a natural response. So let's just say I moved to Dominica. I am from St. Kitts. I'm away from my family. I'm going to feel a bit disconnected from what I know. Loneliness, might pop up in that situation. Or I may get a new job and I'm in a new environment with new persons. Feelings of loneliness might pop up. So it really is an emotional state of being disconnected from others. But I think where the issue comes, it's that we are seeing, lately, the pandemic has really escalated it, a chronic sense of loneliness throughout our community. And it's a phenomenon because now more than ever, we're connected with each other. We have technology, We have WhatsApp, we have Twitter, we have Zoom, these types of media, but we're still feeling lonely. And so we have to be mindful of just the factors that might contribute to us feeling disconnected from others. Now, previously, before the pandemic, loneliness was just seen as another thing to speak about. But at the start of the pandemic, there was just some conversation about what are the types of loneliness. So we saw different types, and I just want to emphasize the types, Kyle, because we all experience loneliness differently. So there are persons who might experience that intimate loneliness, where they don't have a friend, they don't have a confidant, they don't have a partner, they don't have a bestie who they can connect with. And then you might be just relationally lonely, where you might have a partner, but you don't have a friend group. You don't have a network, you don't have a family support that is necessary. And then there is that collective loneliness where you can't find people around you who you can align with because of the values or the purpose that you are passionate about. So each of us, we might experience loneliness in a different way. I might be lonely intimately because I don't have a partner. But you might have a partner and you feel quite fine, and you might feel a bit lonely because you don't have that friend group. You don't have that support within your family. And someone else, they might have a partner, they might have a best friend, they might have the friendship circle, the family support, but they haven't found their tribe. Similar to JCI, similar to the Rotary Club, churches give you that sense of purpose, associations, so they might feel a bit lost and lonely. So I want persons to really appreciate that it's natural, there are different types, and it might change over time, and we're each susceptible to experiencing it. And it's very different from aloneness, and I don't know if we're going to go into that, Kyle, but sometimes we get the two mixed up. So you can be alone, but not lonely. But that's a whole different conversation. But loneliness is that disconnection, and aloneness is that physical isolation, being away from that social setting. I'm hoping that the other panelists can really build on what I shared.
Wow, so you give us a lot to think about, and it's very eye-opening, because it's true. You can have all the friends in the world, but if there's no actual purposefulness coming from that relationship, you can feel very lonely while still having that surrounding. And let's even talk about, and you raised a very good point as we were talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and how we were isolated, we were inside, not necessarily at any fault of our own, and now we have to adjust to seeing people every day, to seeing people once a day or once a week or once a month or once every 3 months, and having to face people through this impersonal way, via Zoom, via WhatsApp call, via FaceTime, whatever way it was. And it could have made a lot of people feel very lonely. And as you say, intimate loneliness, not having that physical person there to actually talk to when you needed them to talk to. And that's a very good point you made there, and I'm really appreciative of that. And sometimes it just goes to show, and I wanted to say in public to realize, it just goes to show how you can be experiencing something, and only when you open your eyes and see, wait a while, this is actually happening to me. And someone has to talk about it for you to realize, oh wait, that's what I was going through, and that's why I was feeling so down all the time. That's a very good point you made there, Miss Dentricia Blanchett. So, very good point. So you classified what loneliness is, and I think Miss Blanchett did a very good job on that. And I want to call on Diana to zone in on the next question. What do you think is the impact of a loneliness on mental health?
Hi, File. So yes, we spoke about mental health being in a state of mind where you're able to really connect with your community. And I feel as if when you are lonely, we've used this term, I've heard this term, Dr. and Ms. Blanchett used the term of being disconnected. And if you're disconnected from your community, and when I speak of community, I speak of your family members. It may be the persons at work. It may be your friends at school, whether it's college, whether it's primary or secondary school, wherever you are. Once you are unable to connect with persons, you tend to be, there are varying places that you can be in mentally. And, one of the things that would stand out right for me is depression. You feel that disconnect, you're unable to, even though persons are there with you physically, and especially during the pandemic when you were home in that space with everyone all the time, and you couldn't find common ground at times. And even though you're having conversations, it's surface conversations that is not satisfying that deep yearning, aching need that makes you connect to your family within the space that you're in. And then you just feel as if you're in a dark place because you haven't been able. We will all admit that being able to meet up with a friend and share something that you have in common that brings you joy, it feels as if there's a light bulb is lighting up your life. The sun has risen. But when you're unable to connect,
right now. You're speaking to the choir.
when you are unable to connect, there is darkness, and there are varying levels of darkness, and that is how it affects us mentally. It could be that it's just, and you can't classify mental illness as small or large, but there can be a blanket darkness, where you physically don't even want to get out of bed because you haven't been able to connect. And then there's one where you can just be operational, where you're doing day-to-day stuff, but nothing brings you real joy. And then there are little spurts of happiness when you're able to see a little light, a little shimmer of light, but then you're not able to fully appreciate it. And depending on the level or the category of loneliness, that is how I think our mental health can be affected. And I think I'm hoping that the words that I use kind of created a picture for you so that you can see that you can have blanket where you're just fully into depression and it's chronic, you can't just get out of it. Then there are little spurts of sunlight, where you're able to connect sometimes, but then more than normal, you feel as if you feel isolated, you feel as if I can do certain things but some things I can't do. You really cannot connect to your community and enjoy life.
That's a very good point you just made there. I what makes me almost want to question. It's not one of the questions that would have been shared with you, but is there a link between loneliness and depression, and how closely connected are they? Can one exist without the other?
I can say that you can't be depressed without feeling lonely. And it depends. I think that they can exist. I have a friend, and that can tell you, I'm not lonely, but I'm depressed. I'm in a dark space, and thank God, she'd say, Diana, give me some time. I'd like to have some time alone. I'm not in a good place. I am going through one of my periods, and that's what she refers to it as. And she says, I'm not lonely, but it's dark. I'm not where I want to be. And if you ask her, why is it that you're feeling this way? Do I need to come over? No, she does not want that. That's not what fills her gap. She's more of an introvert, and she grows and she blooms in a space by herself. I have someone in the background that is just pushing words at me. He said, so that she can self-reflect. So thank you very much, Jamal. Yeah, so that she can self-reflect and she can get out. So she's not lonely, but she's depressed. And so she has her own coping mechanisms. But then again, there are some persons who are lonely and they are depressed, or they're depressed and lonely, vice versa. So there are links between the two, but it's not always the case. And this is my opinion, Well, and the others can weigh into it, but I think that they can be linked, but I also think that they can be separate, where you are depressed but not lonely.
Thank you very much.
You guys can weigh in.
Thank you very much for that, Diana. So I want to call on Miss James. Miss James, what do you think is the impact of loneliness on mental health?
Okay, so mental health can be impacted by loneliness. First of all, we have to know, or we have to emphasize again that we were born to be with people. Evolutionary psychology says that we need people, we need to be part of the society. So like the previous scholar says, one of the things that can happen is that we can get depressed. Also, we can become anxious because we're lonely. We're there with people, but yet we're lonely. We can develop low self-esteem because we're by ourselves. We're not part of the group, and we tell ourselves, I'm not good enough, which is not necessarily true, but that's what loneliness can lead to. We can also have sleep problems, and when we suffer from sleep problems, we know it's going to affect us mentally, and sleep problems can lead to depression. So as a branch of loneliness is sleep problem can lead to depression. So depression comes in again. Stress can be part of being lonely or can be a mental aspect. While it's true, we're focusing on mental health. Remember, I said your physical health is very important too. And if you're not mentally healthy, you may not be physically healthy. And there are also physical aspects. But because we're on mental health, I will leave it there for this evening. Fire.
Thank you very much, Miss James. And you really opened some very important parts. And we raised the concept of sleep, and we also raised the concept of stress, a very heavy word. I think it's a discussion that we can just have a whole session on. A whole 1 hour would not be enough talking about stress alone and how it in itself can impact the body. But
I agree.
We're talking about loneliness and how it affects our psyche. And before I proceed to the rest of the question, let's have a question. Is loneliness a symptom of something? And I want to ask you, Dentricia, is it a symptom of something, or is it a disease or a mental illness on its own? Is it something that can, and I know I asked it in a different way earlier, can loneliness be separate to depression? But is it something that can stand on its own? Is it a mental illness of its own grooming, if you will?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that question. So loneliness is not a diagnosed mental health disorder, but it can be a symptom of a mental health disorder. And so someone would have mentioned, I think my friend from Guyana would have mentioned, depression, and the counselor in Dominica would have also mentioned, I'm sorry, I can't get your names, guys, anxiety and depression. There are times, and I just want to state this, that you can be depressed and not feel sad. And sometimes we think that depression is just sadness. There are so many other symptoms to depression that are outside of sadness. And so we want to be mindful of that. And then there is a window for depression to be diagnosed, that 2-week window. So we want to be able to be tracking ourselves. But loneliness can increase your feelings of sadness, and that can get in the way of distress. It can prevent you from, as someone would have shared, wanting to get out of bed. You may want to self-isolate, you pull yourself away from people. You might engage in, some harmful behaviors because of just the distressed feelings and thoughts that you might be struggling with. So there is a subtle interplay. So I do want us to be mindful that when we are feeling lonely, it is important for us not to just say, "Meh, I'm going to ignore it. It's going to pass." It's really important that we become intentional about it, because If we do not, it is like that nagging sound in our ear. It's going to get louder and louder and louder until it becomes a mental health disorder in whatever form, whether it's through heightened anxiety, whether it's through depression, whether it leads to suicide ideation, whether it leads to social isolation, that might lead into other things. So whenever we feel disconnected, it is important that we deal with it immediately before it festers and it becomes something really huge. As someone would have shared, it becomes a huge dark cloud. And we know that, within the field, that there are people who are struggling, not because of, a lack of willpower, not because they're not strong, not because they're not trying. It's really because that large dark cloud is overwhelming. And so it's physically and emotionally impossible to move through that dark cloud. So as best as we can, before that dark cloud presses down on us, where we just give up and we're ready to just, not get the help that we deserve, we need to tackle it immediately, guys, because there is that subtle interplay.
Thank you very much for that, then, Tricia. We're very quickly running out of time, so I want to try to get the rest of the questions out. But I'm enjoying the conversation so much because I'm learning so much, and I'm sure our listening public is learning a lot more. So, but back to the questions that we're actually supposed to be asking you. But I mean, as I said, it's a very interesting topic, and a lot of things might come up as we're going. But I want you to answer this. What are some coping strategies that you would recommend to people experiencing loneliness? That's for you, don't you, sir? The coping strategies. What are some coping strategies that you would recommend for someone who is experiencing loneliness?
Kyle, you need to give someone else a chance. But I can give. I think there are things that we can do. So one of the huge things that I'll really suggest is that you find your community. Someone would have mentioned that we are gregarious beings, we're social beings, and that means that we cannot isolate. Sometimes we think, especially as young people, we have all the technology, so we don't need to be physically around people to be connected. The science says different. We have to be physically around people. So it's important for you to find your tribe, and that tribe can be an association, it can be your church, it can be a political group, it can be a group passionate about something that you care about. In terms of social issues, find your tribe and bond with them over a passion or a purpose. And then I want you to really think about that mind and body connection. Many times, we aren't aware of our thoughts, and those thoughts can really send us down the rabbit hole of loneliness. So I really want to challenge you to engage in mindfulness, pausing. I know in the Caribbean we don't like to pause. We're always on the go. But pause and check in with yourself. Go on a walk and just, talk out whatever is on your chest. Think about whatever your thoughts are. Get your thoughts out of your head. Because that really helps to put a lot of things in perspectives. Because sometimes we think that we don't have a community or no one cares about us, but that's very different from the reality. And then I really want you to be open to help. That's important. Sometimes we can be lonely because we want to be in a certain group. So we have friends who are always there for us, but we want a certain type of friends to be our friends, and we might feel lonely because that certain type of community is not our community. I want you to be open to different ways that people show up for you. And of course, it would be remiss of me not to say go to therapy, guys. Please engage in counseling. You guys are in Dominica. There are trained therapists and counselors on Dominica who are culturally competent, and they are trained just to hear you, just to give you perspective and to give you that safe space to deal with that crushing weight of loneliness if it gets in the way of you living.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blanchett. And I see Dr. John Jones has her hand raised, so I was coming to her next. Dr. John Jones, tell me, what are some coping strategies that you would recommend to one of your patients who is suffering or living with loneliness?
Okay, just to add to what I think Miss Blanchett said, so you can make new connections. If a patient comes in, for example, and the patient says that, they feel lonely, they suffer from, it's like they don't want to be around people, they feel like they just isolated and, all of that. I mean, stuff you would encourage them. They try peer support. There are peer support groups. We don't have it in Dominica, but I mean, we have it in other parts of the Caribbean. They could also try talking therapies. They could look after themselves. I mean, when I mean look after yourself, you take time out for yourself. You treat yourself. You go to the gym. You do exercises. You join dance groups. You can become friends with yourself. Also, you can try support online. There are these patients, I mean, with different mental disorders. What they do is that they go online and they find different online supports where they take part in. That way they don't, feel lonely. You could also adopt a pet. I mean, there are some people that are introverts and they tend to be by themselves and they rather be by themselves. Instead of you feeling lonely, adopt a pet, have a dog, have a cat. I mean, I do this. I have a cat and a dog, and sometimes I feel alone and I talk to my dog and then I feel better. I mean, it's weird, but that's how it is. You could also find things that you find pleasure in doing and indulge in them, like going swimming, going fishing, going hiking. There are people that love the outdoors. So these are things that you could do. You could also distract yourself, and then also you can find whatever existing relationship that you have, you could strengthen those relationships and try not to be always by yourself. Always try to be around people. Try to engage yourself with people more. Talk more. Some people like to keep to themselves and just not talk at all. That's about it. Not much to say, but basically a few people. Miss Blanchard said.
Yes, I mean, don't give me. And again, I don't want anyone else who's listening to this discussion this evening, just like me, and we started off when we talk about mental health, and mental health is not a new concept. It is something that is who you are, just like you have your heart health, your GI health, your respiratory health. Your mental health is just as important, and all of the coping mechanisms that have been listed here this evening can not only be linked and or rather enlisted when we're talking about loneliness, but can also be used for a number of mental health disorders, I'm sure. I'm no expert, but I'm sure I'm giving the right advice. And I see Branches is nodding, so I'm sure she's in agreement with me, right? Also, we are just about ready to wrap up. So I have one final question, and I want everyone to answer this question. So we're going to start off with Diana. Diana, how do you think this discussion will help the community, especially as it relates to loneliness? How do you think that this discussion will help the community, especially as it relates to loneliness? And one time you can give your closing remarks.
Thank you so much, File. The more we talk about things, the more people remember or acknowledge that they exist. Given all, people do acknowledge that loneliness exists, but I think many times they don't acknowledge the impact or the significant impact it can have on not only your mental but your physical health, because they're also connected. So I think having this discussion really helps us, first of all, by having the discussion, we're acknowledging that it exists, and the persons who are listening, they're able to say, this is something that is real and something that we really want, that persons are talking about. And so I'm hoping that it motivates them to join the conversation, to share their experiences, so that persons can feel more a part of the community. Persons can know that the community exists, so that they can, feel as if they can build their own communities to fight loneliness or any sort of mental health challenges that they may be experiencing. So I think that discussions like these should be more frequent, and they should be, all inclusive. within communities, several different communities, like the ones that we have here with you, JCI, and the several partners that you have on board with you, like Dominica Cancer Society, Youth Arm, and so on. So I think that this is important, and as we continue, and I'm hoping that you continue having discussions like these, and we continue talking about these things, that more persons feel comfortable reaching out, and not only reaching out to communities, but building communities of their own where they can share their own mental health challenges, and also look at ways in which they can investigate further. There's so much more that is to be found out about mental health, loneliness, depression, whatever it is. And so we're just scratching the surface. So we hope that this makes you curious, and that you'd want to say more, and that you would want to connect to a community and build your own community. So thank you so much for having me, File. And I really enjoyed this discussion with all the other panelists and all the persons that are on here today. And, I look forward to connecting with your community, and you can always connect with me also, as we all try to stand firm and tall against, any sort of negative, but it's stigma, and ensure that we grow as a community, and a Caribbean community.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Ms. Gittins, and it's been a pleasure having you this evening. So I want to now call on Ms. James, Ms. Frederica James. How do you think this discussion will help the community, especially as it relates to loneliness? And one time you can give your closing remarks as well.
So if people hear, usually when people hear things, especially if it is a positive aspect to life, they will follow. And I hope that people who are listening this evening and think they're lonely or feel lonely, they can always reach out in their community. They can try some of the coping strategies that were given. We remember, like one of the panelists said, the COVID lockdown. And one of the coping strategies is to be active. If you feel lonely and you know you're lonely, be active. So, for example, I just didn't like to plant flowers, plant this. And that's what the lockdown did to me. I had to get something to do. And 2 years after, you'll be surprised to see my flowers and my herbs, etc., etc. So that was a good, that was a positive aspect to the lockdown. You also need, remember, to deal with your barriers. So one of the barriers may be, boy, I have a child and I cannot go out. Look for help, get support. I am pleased that you all decided to do this evening. I hope it causes the people, or people will be active, be patient, and initiate conversations. Do not say I'm lonely and stay in a corner. Get active, be patient. It will take some time. Create a conversation. Don't always wait for people to start a conversation with you. Because sometimes if we're, for example, introverts, people may avoid us and just say we're introverts. But an introvert may be sometimes an extrovert. So sometimes come out of your shell and initiate that conversation. It will help. It will help more so if people used to see you as that introvert. They'll be happy, they'll be excited. Oh, she's coming out. That can help with your loneliness.
Thank you very much, Ms. James, and thank you for joining us this evening. And next, we will have Dr. Shelina John Jules giving us her view on how does she think that this discussion will help the community, especially as it relates to loneliness, as well as to give her closing remarks.
Okay, well, I must say that I was happy for the discussion because I find that we, the people of society, we don't pay much attention when it comes to mental health. And also, there's this stigma and discrimination when it comes to mental health. So people, before you feel lonely and you decide that you will feel lonely or you feel depressed, then because of the discrimination that's attached to it, you tend to keep to yourself. You don't want to go and seek help. And you will find that especially in men. The women are more open up to in seeking help. But the men, they tend to keep to themselves. They don't, because they always feel that, oh, my friends will laugh at me, or my friends will think that, I am a softie, or whatever the case is. So as a result, they don't seek help. And then we find that they being mentally ill or they being lonely, it can lead to one of the effects that loneliness have on us is depression, and then which can also lead to suicide. So you will find that there's a higher rate of suicide in men than women, because because of the discrimination, they refuse to seek help. So I am hoping that discussion, the people that are listening, if they have friends, they have family members, or they themselves suffer from loneliness or some type of mental disorder, that they encourage them to get help. They encourage them. I mean, we are always open. Our doors are always open. You feel that you need somebody to talk to? Come, feel free. Come talk to somebody about your problems. You don't want to see a doctor, but you can tell a friend. Your friend can seek help for you. And I would like to thank you guys for having me on this show. Although I was contemplating on doing it, but with your PRO, Milan, harassing me, I did not have a choice, I must say. I was obligated. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. John George. You did an amazing job. Honestly, it's a different side of you from our usual interaction. I really appreciated your contribution this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. And last but not least, Ms. Dentricia Blanchett. How do you think that this discussion will help the community, especially as it relates to loneliness? And also, you can give us your final comments for this evening.
You know what I love about this discussion, Kyle, that it's youth-led, and I think that's a good representation that young persons are at the heart of the issues that are facing our community. And more importantly, we saw a good representation of the region here tonight. We had someone from Guyana, hi, and myself from St. Kitts, and then we have our colleagues in Dominica. And so you see that even though we're on different islands, the issues are the same, but there is help on every single island to help you to manage those feelings of loneliness that are very natural. And so I want to challenge you to maybe give yourself a bit more grace. If you're feeling lonely, it's a natural response. It's an invitation to be creative. The counselor in Dominica said she began gardening. You might want to develop a hobby. It's an invitation to become more self-aware. You can look within and recognize, what are my challenges? What are my hindrances? What are my thoughts? And it's an invitation to also look at how you can build relationships with persons around you, whether personally or professionally. I do want to thank you guys so much for this. I'm hoping there's a part 2 and 3. We need more of these discussions, and wishing every single person just Godspeed. We're still in the pandemic. We're still feeling the loneliness and the impacts of the pandemic, and that you continue to take care of yourselves.
Thank you very much. I almost called you Dr. Blanchett. I think I'm speaking things into existence for you.
I accept it.
But definitely you did an amazing job. All the panelists, I'm excited. I'm beaming, as you can see, smiling from ear to ear. A full-on smile right about now. I think we did amazing this evening. We had a lot of fun. And we are... I'm lost for words right now. But I personally, if I as a young person living in Dominica, I know it's very difficult for you to really talk about your issues, because it's a stigma. It exists, mental health issues, and once you start talking about I'm struggling with my mental health, I'm struggling with dealing with my mental health, it tends to be a stigma automatically pops up as if you have like the plague or something. And honestly, it is of concern, and we at JCI Dominica have already identified that it is in fact an issue that we need to talk about. The discussion has started, and I'm so excited that the panelists here have already started to technically agree to come back for parts 2 and 3, and definitely we'll see what we can do to ensure that we have a fruitful discussion, more fruitful discussions, of course, on the topic of mental health. And without further ado, thank you so much for having me this evening hosting this session. And I will now, at this moment, turn you back over to the Public Relations Officer of JCI Dominica, Mr. Milon George. Good evening to all of you.
Good evening to all. Can everybody hear me? Hi, good evening.
Good evening, we can hear you.
All right, lovely. So thank you very much, Mr. SG Lander, and thank you very much to all of the panelists. Before we go ahead, I just want to recognize our partners. Yes, JCI has been loud throughout this session, but I just want to recognize our partners. So one by one, I'm going to call up members of our partners to do basically just a short introduction of their organization and perhaps an objective of the organization. So first I will call up Acting President of the Dominica Cancer Society Youth Arms, Miss Tamara Cornelius.
Everybody, good night again. Very lovely session. I must say that I enjoyed the session. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Dominica Cancer Society Youth Arm. We are an organization that is very young. We are only getting 10 years this year. And our main objective, I would say, is to provide support and to educate and advocate for cancer care. And trend mostly, our target market is children who have been affected by cancer, one way or another, indirectly or directly. We all know that the parents get cancer, yes, and yes, we have children cancer, but however, although the adults have support, we also know that children do it. And I am a proud daughter of a survivor, so I understand what it is when they say that the children are affected when the parent gets cancer. So as a youth farm, we provide support to the children, and somehow or some way we try to give back, because at the end of the day, most of us or some of us, just like me, know the experience and how difficult it is. So one of our main objectives is that we try to raise funds and give scholarships to children that have been affected by cancer one way or another. So last year we gave about 10 scholarships to 10 children, and especially because of chemo and radiation, it is very helpful. The scholarships get these children back to school because everybody knows that cancer treatment is very expensive. So just a little aid to our students and our children that have been affected by cancer, we try to give back. So right now, one of our fundraising activities that we are doing is actually a raffle of an air fryer. And right now, you see different youth arm members going around with the raffle sheets. We will have one at Ruby's gas station, especially the one High Street. So that'll be one of the places that you can actually get a chance to win an air fryer. It's only $5 a chance, and I'm encouraging persons of the public to just support. It is a fundraising activity, and any donation that you give is going to provide extreme support. We are grateful for every little penny that we get, because every penny goes a long way. And that's what I will say about Dominica Cancer Society.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cornelius. One of the things that usually happens to me is when I start to talk, I usually forget what I wanted to say at the beginning. So I just want to say, the discussion. On the discussion, one thing I wanted to say is that, I will leave that for our next partner, who is the current president of the Dominica Dementia Foundation. So Mrs. Veron Nicholas.
Hi, good evening once again, Miss Veronica. Thank you, Milon. As he said, I'm the current president of the Dominica Dementia Foundation, and it is a youth-led organization which started in 2016 by Rihanna Patterson, and it was to commemorate the memory of her grandfather at the time, who had developed dementia. And since then, the organization has been providing support for families and caretakers, and usually the support is in terms of emotional and well, I guess you could say mental, so we should add that mental support, because we do have a support group that we have, I think, every third Sunday. And what we do is we ensure that we contact everybody, invite them in, well, as many persons as we can, invite them into the conversation, and let them have a space to discuss what they have gone through. And I personally, I can tell you that from in my own personal experience, because when I joined, I think it was in last year, it was a way for me a let out to release some of the tension in caring for somebody. And we need to have a space for persons who are going through this process to exhale, to describe what they're going through, because sometimes it's not easy to explain to others what the situation entails and what is happening to you, because there is a disconnect between, yes, you're taking care of somebody, and then yet you want to, let's say, for example, do something in life, and you sometimes cannot find the free time. So the Dominica Dementia Foundation has also been looking at implementing and hopefully implementing a plan with Ministry of Health. And of course, this will take some time, so hopefully sometime in the future we will have more information on that. Milan?
Lovely, thank you very much, Miss Nicholas. Next up, I will call, well, tonight she actually is sitting on 2 seats. So I'll call her back up again. That is Dr. Shelina Jondro. She is the Geriatrics Director for the Lions Club of Dominica. So,
No, may I correct you?
oh, go ahead. I am not.
It's Committee, Health and Environment and Geriatrics Committee.
Thank you very much for correcting me. Sorry.
Okay, sir. Okay, so I must say that Lions Club is not only in Dominica, it's international. And basically what we do is bringing kind-hearted people together to serve their communities, is what we're all about. We see a problem and then we take action to solve it, basically. We build relationships with our communities, with one another, and with people they serve, or people that we serve. And as a result, everyone's life is improved. I mean, we try our best to make a contribution to society wherever we can. And we not only deal with health and environment, we also deal with the youth and children. And we've had many projects where we donated books to schools and assist children, giving them scholarships. And yeah, that's about it for now. Well, Milan said short and to the point. So that's about it. Thank you, Milan.
Thank you very much, Dr. John Rose. You're like putting me on the spot. Well, I will introduce JCI. JCI Dominica is one of the largest global networks for young, active citizens. Our goal is to create leaders for a changing world. And activities like this is one of the things that we engage in. And we also seek to develop our members to become leaders in our community. At the moment, JCI Dominica, well, JCI West Indies is to host our national convention right here in Dominica in October 16th to the 22nd. We have our national convention, Convention 62, which is one of the largest networking, sitting of young people that you will find across the world. And one of the things we would want to do is thank our sponsors, our platinum sponsors, which is Discover Dominica Authority. Well, they have decided to join us on this venture. And we just want to say thank you to them. Thank you for making Dominica, putting Dominica on the map again, yeah? I want to recognize, members of the board I see them on our Zoom call, members of the board of JCI Dominica, members of the board of Dominica Dementia Foundation, and I also want to recognize members of the board of Dominica Youth Arms and Lions Club. We have one more group, one more partner we have for tonight who sent a video presentation, and I will just allow the video to present itself because I don't want to mispronounce anyone's name, as the name is not one that is so familiar with me. So I will go ahead and share this presentation with you. Just give me one moment before we move on. Just a moment. So they are from the Caribbean, Healthy Caribbean.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danielle Walwyn, and I'm the Advocacy Officer at the Healthy Caribbean Coalition. Before I say anything further, I just want to give huge kudos and thanks to JCI Dominica and partners and all of you who are part of this session today. It's so timely. It's needed. We need to continue to have spaces and create spaces where we can have conversations like these. So thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to allow HCC, the Healthy Caribbean Coalition, to present a little bit more about what we are doing with mental health. So if you're not aware, the Healthy Caribbean Coalition is a coalition or a network of civil society organizations focused on the prevention and control of non-communicable diseases across the region and beyond. And the youth arm of the Healthy Caribbean Coalition is called Healthy Caribbean Youth. And the goal of Healthy Caribbean Youth is to empower young Caribbean people as NCD prevention and control leaders advocating for a healthier Caribbean. And so over the COVID-19 pandemic, the Healthy Caribbean Youth hosted 2 webinars. One focused on how the school environment can better support the mental health and well-being of students. And the other was really taking a deep dive into students' personal experiences and really getting an understanding of some of the challenges that they had, but also some of the solutions that they think that we should adopt regionally to better support youth and children's mental health and well-being. And building off from that, we really realized that we need to continue this conversation and we need to raise our voices and really think about the actions that we need to see our policymakers and other key stakeholders like the private sector, the public sector, civil society do across the region to make and prioritize mental health and well-being and create positive spaces to support the mental health and well-being of children and young people. And so we created a call to action, which is a list right now of 10 specific calls that really provide some guidance for key stakeholders as to what they can do to support mental health and well-being. And so the Healthy Caribbean Youth drafted this, but we realized that, again, we need to amplify this and we need to get other youth on board. And so we've been having consultations with youth from across the region over the past 2 months. We've been really grateful to have consultations with youth from Dominica. And it's been wonderful. We've been able to expand the call to action, and we're really looking towards, again, making it a document that we can all youth within the region stand behind. And so if you're interested in giving your feedback on this call to action and want to have a discussion with us, email us because we want to hear from you. We really do want to hear from you. Even if you're not a young person, but you're interested in mental health. I know we have a lot of experts on the call. If you're interested in working with young people to get this call to action out, we'd love to hear from you. So I'm leaving our email right here. The next steps with the call to action are really to release some sensitization material because we recognize from our consultations that there are a number of gaps. whether it's related to stigma, whether it's related to death by suicide. There are a lot of gaps and a lot of opportunities for us to share knowledge and use the opportunity ahead of releasing the call to action to share knowledge and sensitize persons to these important topics regarding mental health and well-being. And then once we've done our sensitization, we're looking forward to sharing this call to action and getting confirmation from some of the stakeholders like policymakers, like civil society, like school environments, to sign on and commit to doing at least one of the calls that we've outlined. We're looking forward to having you on board. So again, if you'd like to join this discussion and join this amplification of what we think as young people the Caribbean needs to better support mental health and well-being of children and fellow young people, email us here. Again, thank you all so much for creating this space and for sharing your expertise and your perspectives and your personal experiences. Thank you, JCI and partners, for putting on such a timely event and giving us an opportunity to share, another avenue where young people can come together and really fight for something that all of us on this call, I know, agree is important. Thank you.
And with no further ado, let us go back to schedule. I would like to now invite Acting President of JCI Dominica, Ms. Aisha John Baptist, with the closing remarks.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of JCI Dominica, it is my honor to deliver this closing remark this evening. The organization is delighted with gratitude and respect for our illustrious and knowledgeable panelists for not only sparing your invaluable time on this Friday evening, but for also educating us on mental health, mental illness, its impact on our lives, and the coping strategy, a topic that is most times disregarded. To the partners who have also come on board with us to make this panel discussion possible, we say thank you. Thanks to everyone who has signed on to listen and participate in tonight's discussion, as I can guarantee you, we are all living with a different view on such a broad topic. As we leave, let us remember what Miss James quoted: a healthy mind is a healthy body, and a healthy body is a healthy life. Thanks, everyone, and have a good evening.
The world needs effective global leaders who can navigate environments that are complex and ever-changing. But we cannot wait too long to train these current and aspiring leaders. That's where JCI comes in. JCI is an organization for long-term leadership, training, and networking opportunities for young people. We amplify natural talents and create globally minded leaders who can change their communities for the better. We empower the next generation of leaders through events that build networking capabilities, training that hones skills, programs that shape leadership potential, and projects that test resourcefulness. In JCI, you'll meet people from around the world, working as professionals in every industry imaginable. Together, we find solutions to the world's biggest challenges. We are focused on empowering young people to take responsibility for the future. We achieve this by fostering growth in the 4 areas of opportunity: individual development, business and entrepreneurship, community action, and international cooperation. Our impact is felt on a global scale through thousands of member projects that focus on localized needs, from community development to entrepreneurial support. JCI is for people who are never satisfied with the status quo. So together, with our partners, members, and allies, we're working to take full responsibility for the future we want. At JCI, we're leading for life.